Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast. This is Rockstar Superhero Podcast number 8. And thank you for bearing with me. I really appreciate you guys showing up today. Today's podcast is a really unique thing, very, very different. I had a chance to interview Garrick Pang with Stronger Families. And before you make that terrible snap judgment that this podcast is about something you think it is, well, you're wrong. This week's podcast, I'm going to say it one more time, podcast, and I'm trying not to into the microphone, is really about 900 different things. We do some great tangential moments, and we really just discuss what life is about, what Stronger Families is about, what I'm going through personally, what Garrick is going through personally. It's just a conversation with a really cool dude who loves soccer. And second generation Chinese gentleman, it was so much fun. I really had a blast with him. Stronger Families happens to have a podcast studio in their office, and thank God, because it's been crazy hot this week in the Seattle area. We are not accustomed to 85, 90, 95 degrees. And today, in fact, I'm recording this separately from the day I did the podcast. I did it a few days ago. And I'm sitting here in my house, in my kitchen, and it is 8 p.m. and it is 92 degrees in my house because nobody here has AC, man, except, snooty rich people. And I am not a snooty rich person. So there it is. I hope you guys hang in there. Check it out. It's a really, really cool interview, and you get to hear some really, really naughty stuff about me today. So rock and roll. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Wait a minute, it's summertime. All right, rock and roll.
I hosted, the afternoon drive show at KGNW Radio.
What?
Yeah, for a whole week. I was behind the microphone.
For a whole week. I love that.
Yeah.
For a whole week.
For a whole week.
Look at me.
I lined up a bunch of guests and interviewed them and had a great time with it.
Now, KGNW, that's 8:20, right?
That's 8:20 a.m. Yeah.
So what were you doing when you were on there? What kind of guests did you have on, and what did you talk about?
So I had a pretty broad variety of folks on. I had Mike Howerton, who is the pastor at Overlake, and he had just written a book, and so I got him on there.
That's cool.
I had, what's her name? She does a ministry out of Vegas. She was my only radio, or my guest over the phone. She does Hookers for Jesus.
What?
Yeah, you need to get
totally
her.
Got to talk to her.
Oh, she's awesome. She's awesome.
Oh my
and
gosh.
She's got an incredible testimony. We're Facebook friends, and
Really?
so I had her on. Rob McKenna was running for office,
Right.
And so I had Rob on there. Because I went to high school. He was a couple years ahead of me at Sammamish High School, and so
He's an awesome guy.
he
I like
is
that.
an incredible guy.
Yeah. When I was running an insurance agency, he would come to the. I think at the time he's the attorney general, and so he would meet with us and talk about strategies and the way the insurance commissioner's office is not necessarily doing what he wants. wants to see them do. But he was great. I really admire him. I would have loved to have seen him become the governor. I would have loved that.
Yeah, or maybe I had Susan Hutchinson on. I can't remember. And I had different. Yeah, just kind of a pretty broad cross section of different folks. I've got all the interviews. I mean, I'll send them to you if you want.
I would love to hear them.
Yeah,
so. I could even post them for you. The best of Garrick Pang.
Yeah, right.
Everybody, the best of Garrick Pang. It's funny when we had lunch. I was a tad nervous because when you're friends with somebody, and especially our conversation afterwards, you start thinking like, man, I mean, am I gonna get here in front of the microphone and just freeze? Right? Kind of like lose myself and not have a clue, right? And fall out of a conversation and just get nervous, right?
Right.
But I'm really honored you're here.
Well, it's my privilege, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. No, it's so cool. So I'm sorry I have to clear my throat a few times. It's driving me crazy, but you know, typically I would start with a question, but what I want to do today is actually say, hey, Garrick, what would you like to start with? And I know that's maybe going to throw you off a bit, but we can go all over the map. We can talk about everything you want today. And I really want this to be a conversation. So, feel free to maybe tell me a bit about, where you've been or what you're doing now. And then we'll actually get rolling into the deeper questions.
Yeah, well, Rob, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, you did throw me off because I was thinking that you would just kind of fire these questions at me and then I could just answer them. No,
Larry King, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I grew up in this area. I was born in Seattle and moved back east when we were pretty young. So we went from Seattle to Bellevue. So way back east, 20 minutes. You're supposed to respond with laughter.
I was trying to hold my tongue.
That was my attempt at a joke, and it just like...
If people could only see our faces right now, they'd realize how brutal that was right now. It was just a total face.
Yeah, that's okay.
No. But what people don't know, and I have to apologize, is I was tweaking a few buttons on my mixer, and so I wasn't fully present.
Do I have to tell the joke over again?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes. No.
So we moved.
No, wait. Let me cut it in.
There we go.
There it is.
Yes. Back east from
you,
Seattle
buddy.
to Bellevue.
Yeah.
And so, or I could say overseas even.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
But I grew up in Bellevue. So from the age 4, and Bellevue was a tiny bedroom community back in the 60s when I was growing up, and it was not very ethnically diverse either.
Right.
It was very much a white suburb, but that's what I knew, and I loved it. Grew up here, ended up I kind of was looking for. My parents were always looking for things for me to do, and I started playing soccer, and so soccer was really my first love.
Wow.
We went to a few Sounders games, and that was really cool because the Sounders were a new team in the mid-'70s there, and I just got so excited, and I loved soccer. So every day I'd come home from school, rain or shine, I'd be outside kicking that ball, practicing,
Wow.
and just ended up, falling in love with soccer. And then soccer ended up getting me to Seattle Pacific University, back to Seattle, and just had a great experience there. Even though I was kind of a bench rider back in the day, my 4 years at SPU, there were 3 national championships, and it was a great place. But more than that, I think found some really incredible relationships and friendships, as people often do when they're at college. And then just my love for soccer ended up through soccer going down to Los Angeles and played in a semi-pro league there, and helped set up an organization that went over to England, and I was in England for 4 years, met my wife there.
What?
Yeah, I played semi-pro in LA, and then over in England was playing and got my coaching credentials from the English Football Association.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, I got to fire my researcher. Which, it's me.
Well, these are the stories that aren't out there on the web.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So your wife is actually British?
Yeah, she's British nationality, but she's full-blooded Italian.
Oh, my gosh.
So we have the best food in our house.
Oh, man.
Because we both love to cook. So between Chinese food, and my wife is an amazing cook. And that's why I still play soccer, so that I don't weigh 400 pounds, because I just love to eat.
Was soccer for you, now growing up in a predominantly white community like you mentioned, was soccer for you kind of an escape from feeling like you didn't fit in as well? Was that part of it for you?
No, not at all, because soccer was very much, in the East Side back in those days had great soccer.
Right.
And so it was just what all the kids were doing. And it was fun, and it was kind of an escape, from from the pressures of life, you
Right.
know, that you have when you're 12.
Right, and a great blow off of energy as well.
Yeah, and because I love to play, then it was just fun for me. And you know, at the ripe young age that I am now, I still continue to play 2-3 times a week.
Wow.
And so I love it.
No, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you played soccer, and I knew you favored soccer.
Yes.
But I didn't realize it was to the level you did. So you actually went overseas and competed at a professional level. You just didn't get into, you know, you didn't play on an Olympic team, and you didn't you didn't end up in the Cosmos, you know, in 1981.
Although my teammate did.
Really?
Yeah, he played for the Cosmos and.
Oh my! Wow,
yeah.
Sure, I was name dropping the only name I could remember from the early, what was it called back then?
The NASL, the North
Okay.
American Soccer League.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And so but I've played in front of the largest audience potentially. I played a game in northern China, and it was on provincial-wide television, which they told us had a potential viewing audience of 35 million people.
Wow, which is small in China.
Yeah, right.
Right. Wow. So now curious, excuse me, about your heritage and your Chinese family. Are you second, third? What's your generation? And how did that all happen with your family coming to the States?
I never know how people count in terms of when people came over, but my mom was born in China. My dad was actually born in Mississippi.
Oh.
And yeah, I know.
How does that happen?
Well, oddly enough, when the Chinese in the 1800s built pretty much our Transcontinental Railroad, a lot of them settled in the southeastern United States because the topography and the climate was very similar to southeastern China.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so there's actually a huge core of Chinese down through from Houston all the way across over to Florida. There's a great number of Chinese down there. So my father, my grandfather, my father's father, owned a little store, and he had his little niche market because he sold to black people. Because this is like late 20s.
Okay.
And, you know, still very segregated in the South. But he had his little market where he would, you know, he was a Chinese guy, but he sold to people of color. And it was, he had his little business there. But then when my dad was just a few years old, his dad sent the family back to China to be educated.
Oh. Okay.
Because he was concerned about the level of education that they would get there. And so they went to China, and then he moved them back to Seattle, and that's where he and my mom met, because my mom's family immigrated in about 1940, when the Japanese started the bombing in southeastern China. So they fled and came to the States, and my mom was in high school. She met my dad. He was a college student at University of Washington, and so that's
so your dad took the route of Bruce Lee. Actually, your dad preceded Bruce Lee in
That's
being
right.
like just So I noticed on I don't know if it's Wikipedia, but you know you have a bit of an online presence that you took martial arts and that you are a martial artist now. Maybe it was on LinkedIn. I saw this.
yeah. I don't think I have a wiki profile.
That would be really cool. Yeah, I don't have a wiki profile. So tell me about that. How did that come into your life? Martial arts, was that introduced by your family, or was that again one of those things you just saw as a child and you said, I want to be a part of that? Or?
I did not. I don't have an advanced degree in martial arts at all. I just took it for fun. My kids were actually what encouraged me to get involved with it. My older boys, who are now 21 and 18, but when they were younger, so probably 10 years or more ago, we just got them involved in it, and they were doing adults as well. And so I got involved in the class, and I made it to green belt in Shudokan style of karate.
Okay.
And I haven't pursued it for the last few years.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
just fit the Asian stereotype, right?
Yeah. I was like, man, should I fear you? Can you make me a great bowl
you
of rice?
absolutely should fear me. Yeah.
Yeah. The lead pastor of a major Northwest church, and I have to worry about him breaking me down out in the sidewalk somewhere. Did I just make you super uncomfortable?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm going to take a drink of my water here.
Good. Well, you are the lead pastor at Delta Community Church in Everett.
Yes.
Currently.
I am.
Correct?
That's one of the hats that I wear.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about all these hats, because I'm definitely here to talk about stronger families. I want to talk about that because at length, because I love the mission, everything I know about it, and I imagine you can flesh it out far better for me than I could read, right? But I want to know what drives you to wear these different hats. And so if you don't mind, start with the church.
Well, I'm hoping we didn't lose a bunch of your listeners when you said that I was a pastor, because
No.
And to be honest, sometimes I stay in the closet on my pastoring.
Okay.
Because of the fact that, especially here in the Northwest, there is a lot of preconceived notions, and I would say in our culture in general,
right,
in terms of, well, if this person's a pastor, then they must be X.
Right.
Or if this person,
Right. They think away, they feel away, they're against X, whatever. Right.
I just discovered on last night that the kids had been watching TV Land, and they had this show now called Impastor. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, it's like Bad Pastor.
Well, there's this guy who he's wanted by these drug dealers or someone, and he ends up, there's a guy who jumps off a bridge or falls off a bridge, and his car is there, so he jumps into the car, and it turns out this guy is a pastor, and so he then takes the identity on of this pastor, so that's why the show is called Impastor.
Right.
Like imposter.
Right.
And but the interesting thing about this show, you probably don't want to get your theology from it, but
that or Book of Eli.
but what I love about it is that he doesn't apply these spiritual solutions to people's life problems, but rather and this is from watching the 2 episodes that I did, okay? But he speaks real life language to people.
Right.
And I believe that this is how Jesus was.
Right.
Okay? Not that Jesus was an imposter, but that he was there, and people were expecting from his mouth to come these spiritual answers.
Right.
But rather than that, he gave them what life is really about.
Right.
And to me, as a pastor, that's what's important to me.
Right.
Because I think we have these expectations. Well, if you're a pastor, then you're supposed to be this way or that way, or you can listen to that music or that. And,
absolutely.
We were talking earlier over lunch about, language that sometimes comes out when you're talking, and you were sharing things in your last podcast about your dad, and I mean that's the real stuff, and stuff like that doesn't bother me. It doesn't offend me, because I don't think it bothers or offends Jesus.
No, I agree.
Because God knows what's going on in our heart.
Yeah.
And what happens in the religious community, and I use that term intentionally, is that people feel like they have to clean up, and they have to sanitize themselves, and they have to clean up their language, and it's all a farce.
Right.
It's all a facade. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like, you know what? Be real.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what church should be about. That's what our relationship with God is about. Yeah. And I mean, you've gotten me excited because this is exactly why I feel called to continue to do this, even though I have a full-time day job with Stronger Families.
Right.
I pastor on the weekends because I love this little community that I'm a part of there, because I feel like it gives us an opportunity to be real with each other and share life and journey together. And that's what I feel like church is supposed to be.
Yeah. No, I well, again, based on our conversation earlier at lunch, that the podcast listeners did not get, we're not privy to.
No, don't tell them that.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I agree. I could put 1,000 zeros at the end of that. I agree with that completely. And I think that's the struggle of, quote unquote, the believer nowadays, mm-hmm. is that they're caught between walking their lives as a God-infused human, mm-hmm. against what they're told they should act and be like based on religion.
Right.
And that the dichotomy of the two. And I mean, and granted, I don't know many people who would claim themselves to be a believer, a Christian, whatever you want to use the term, that don't necessarily go to churches or the like. But I don't think anybody actually goes home and is, I don't know. They go home and they just sit there with their doilies on and act like Christians all day.
Right.
Darn that Russell Wilson and his errant throw. I mean, they're humans. They go home. And my wife and I had this conversation about a year ago where we were struggling with our marriage, like all husbands and wives do. And we were discussing the fact that everybody goes through these trials, and she made this silly comment, and of course I've given her a hard time about it, so it's all good. She said, "Well, you look at X, Y at church, and look at how happy they are." And I said, "Honey, that's their church face. I'm not saying that that's not their real face, but that's still their church face." Yeah. We all put on at least a little bit of airs because culturally we're expected to act a certain way based on our beliefs.
Well, this is a big part of why the mission of Stronger Families is so important today and why I think we are getting so much traction and why the work has just grown so tremendously is because of the fact that people today, and especially if you look at millennials and this generation that's coming up, so many of them they're living with the realities of broken marriages.
Right.
And people are looking at how they're supposed to behave and how they're supposed to look on the external and realize that it's not matching what's happening internally.
Yeah.
And so this totally connects to what we were talking about in terms of how the faith community tends to be somewhat hypocritical in that way. Yeah. But it's true in the broader community when it comes to marriage. It's like, oh, we put on this face, we go to dinner parties for work and we look a certain way and we act a certain way, or we show up at church and we look away. And the reality is we're struggling in our relationship and our marriage. And when we can start having these real conversations like the conversation that you and your wife had, and the more that we can help our kids to see the reality of the fact that, yes, mom and dad fight, but it's in a healthy way. It's an engagement.
Yeah.
And that it's not just about always everything being lovey-dovey all the time, but the reality of the fact that we're doing life together. And because we're doing life together, things get messy.
Yeah.
And because we're two distinct and unique individuals, I mean, never mind the fact that, if you're in a bicultural, biracial marriage, I mean, that adds a lot of different elements as well. But just two people coming together, you're going to have stress and tension. Excuse me.
That's okay.
And you're going to have all kinds of challenges, and it's how you work through those things, not whether or not they're present. And I think that the old thinking was, well, if I'm struggling, then there must be a problem.
Right.
Well, the truth is, if you're struggling, that means you're real.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with it in a healthy way, that's when you have a good relationship, not the fact that you don't have issues.
Yeah, I think the struggle certainly that I have, and I'm not going to out my wife on her struggles. But
good call.
Yeah. Thank you. I love you, honey. Excuse me, myself. It is the struggle to be real, but my struggles are not always healthy. Meaning how I handle problems. I'll be the first person to raise my arm and say I clearly don't do things right most of the time, and so I want to become more empowered, right? I probably need, I think we all probably need, but I probably need to, get involved with Stronger Families myself, because I recognize in my heart of hearts, if I'm really honest, I'm a pretty broken dude. I mean, I admit my faults. I struggle with stuff. I'll talk about it. I struggle with pornography like most human males. It's definitely a stronghold in my life. I've gotten better over the years. And when I say better, it hasn't invaded my life as much. But I will tell you, it does still invade my life. And there are moments when I do everything I can to battle that away. And I can sense it coming. And I have found relief in it's almost like being in an argument with your spouse. I've heard this for years, that you should get up and, get up and walk away so you don't escalate.
Right.
And for me, that's been what I've been doing in regards to that struggle is okay, I need to go run, or I need to go to the coffee shop, or I just need to call up a friend. And I don't have to talk about it like, hey, Bill, I'm having a problem with pornography today. It's just getting out and stopping that thought process.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing. But I was really empowered recently, and you might have seen this on Facebook. Do you know who Terry Cruz is?
I don't think so.
He's the strongman guy on the what am I thinking? The Old Spice commercials.
Oh yeah.
He's
yeah,
the
yeah.
Old Spice guys. Well, he went online just the other day and said, well, not the other day, maybe 2 months ago, just went on Facebook Live and said, hey, I struggle with pornography. I mean, he's a super famous dude.
Yeah.
And then he talked about his faith, which blew my mind. And it isn't because I thought he's not a Christian guy or that he isn't a normal guy who would struggle with pornography. But it was the fact that he has this giant voice and he just said, here's my issues.
Yeah.
And thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually helped me,
Well, and I think, what you've just shared is incredibly courageous, and to me, it's like, welcome to humanity, welcome to reality. I think people who claim that they don't struggle or who are unwilling to admit whatever the issue is, you're only hiding from yourself, because everybody knows that we all have issues.
Yeah.
And I think this is the really healthy thing about this generation is that people are starting to say, you know what, I'm not going to hide. I don't need to hide. Now, I think where I have issue with some of what's going on in our culture today is that they're also normalizing things and saying, well, yes, this is a struggle of mine, and it's not a struggle, it's just who I am.
Right. I'm going to own it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, literally. Yeah. And so, but I do just feel like, especially when it comes to marriage, there is an importance of owning your stuff and recognizing and putting it out on the table and not trying to hide it.
Yeah.
And then just saying, okay, let's sort through this together. My wife and I, we had this conversation. It's probably been about 3-4 years ago now. And she knows that I've shared this publicly.
Okay.
Because I've shared this in workshops before. Okay. But we were sitting in the living room, and I looked at her and I said, do you ever feel like you're a kid in a grown-up's body?
Wow.
And she looked back at me and she said, I was just kind of thinking the same thing. Because here we were, I think at the time, it may have been more than 7-8 years ago, because I can't remember if we had 2 kids or if we had our third yet. And we both kind of came to this place where it's like we had gone through the motions. We got married. She's quite a bit younger than I am. And we got married, had a couple of years into our marriage. We had a couple of kids, and then we waited 10 years and we had a third child. And we were just sitting around feeling like we had a house, we had kids, we had cars. But emotionally, we didn't really feel like we were grown-ups, but we just had kind of ascended to this age all of a sudden, and now it's like we're really just kids.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing that came from that was that we looked at each other and said, well, why don't we just grow up together?
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
I
love that.
It was one of the sweetest moments, really. And I think we embraced and just shed a tear. But from that point forward, I think in our relationship, one of the things, and I can share with you more too about some of the struggles that we've had in our marriage, but it was one of those things that just really was so profound for us, because then we didn't feel like we had to pretend that we had our stuff together, right? And it's just, let's figure this out. Let's grow together. Let's grow up together.
Yeah.
And so, anyway.
Wow, that's beautiful. You know, I don't want to make this podcast about me, but last night.
Too late.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm discovering one thing. Your microphone sounds way better than mine. Your deep, chunky voice. Last night, my wife and I were having a discussion, and at times heated because we've, I shouldn't say we. I have been pretty tough on her lately because of just, if anybody who's listened to my podcast knows my father passed away recently, and the stresses of starting a new business, the stresses of keeping the podcast going, the stresses of earning a keep, trying to be a husband, trying to be a father, all those things, and sometimes feeling like, oh, look at me, I'm doing so much, and it's unfair that you're only taking care of the kids. You know, that lie, because it's a lie.
It is.
Sometimes I just really, I don't know how to. I don't think I know how to vent properly. You know, I mean, I'm a truth teller.
Yeah.
And that's my greatest strength and clearly my greatest weakness.
Yeah.
But you know, we were talking last night, and I have no idea where I was going with this. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm going to have to cut this out.
There was a direction somewhere.
There was a direction. Wait a minute here. I'm going to get it in a second. Ding. No, it's not coming yet. Ding. No, it's not coming yet.
Because you were just talking about.
Oh my God.
We were
so embarrassed.
That's okay.
You're gonna bring me back, Garrick.
Yeah,
Come
I'm gonna
on,
bring you
me
back. Because I was talking about my marriage and struggles, and you were saying that we struggle. Oh, you. So you went it back.
Yeah.
Do you remember that now?
I remember that. I mean, I guess what I was really just trying to get at, well, at least maybe where I was trying to go with it is last night it occurred to me that we are who we are, right? Going back to this, who we are as people, we are all individually programmed a very specific way, right? And so, for example, me trying to, be better at this as a podcaster, right? Is something I'm drawn to doing. So I want to get better and better and better at it. And I do feel like I've, in a sense, kind of found at least a portion of my calling. But what I'm trying to get at in regards to last night with my wife is we had this discussion / argument that was basically about the fact that we are ourselves and that we don't necessarily have to embrace the crappy parts of us, but being able to come to grips with accepting that these are parts of you I don't like, right? But I'm learning how to live with them, and I'm learning how to embrace them. I'm learning how to love you despite them. And I don't know if this sounds maybe a really selfish thing, but I guess I'm trying to get at that I have a giant pet peeve. I mean, it's the stupidest, most annoying thing, but I can't unwind it. I can't stop having it. My pet peeve is timeliness. If somebody's not on time, makes me bonkers. I mean, it actually upsets me, because to me, if you're not on time, you're saying I'm not important. Right?
Sure.
And I realize I'm OCD about it. I mean, I'm beyond obsessive about it. I will be an hour early, right? As evidenced by today, I was here like an hour and a half early. I was just walking around the parking lot on the phone because of killing time. I just can't be late. And yesterday I had a lot of things planned. Preparation for today, preparation for other things I'm doing. And my wife called me at the last minute and asked me to do some things for her that I knew she needed to do, but they were in complete interruption to what I needed to have done myself. And they completely cut me off at the knees. All the things I needed to do, I did not get done. And so I was just frustrated all day. And then last night we get in this stupid argument, basically because I'm holding it in, just saying, that's not fair. You don't care about me. And the fact is, she does care about me.
Right.
A lot. I mean, more than I'm sure any other human being does. And I'm grateful for that. But I do struggle with being okay with when somebody can appreciate you for your strengths and your weaknesses, but doesn't necessarily make the changes to
try and adapt.
To try and adapt, right? Because to me, that's a what I can't even think of the term right now, but that's a non-negotiable. Right. For me. The time thing is an absolute non-negotiable, and it's an absolute thorn in our relationship in regards to the difficulties we go through, because it's always based on my inability to allow time to stretch.
Yeah.
It's a huge struggle.
So, in our counseling session here today,
Thank you, sir. That's $500. No.
But I would really encourage you, though, that the reality of being in relationship with someone means that there's give and take.
Absolutely.
Right? And when you say non-negotiable, that's I'm not going to give.
It's unfair.
Right?
No, I know. It's a huge thing.
And I, excuse me, I used to be one who would, and I'm not always on time for things.
Right.
I certainly have gotten better over the years than I used to be. But the reality is that I have learned, because I get uptight too about time, and because of the exact reason that you said earlier, because I don't want someone to feel like I don't value them.
Right.
That's a big part of why I made sure that I was on time always. But then on the other side of it, I think, is recognizing the reality of the fact that life happens for people.
Yeah, all the time.
And especially when you're a mom, when you're dealing with things and you just can't get to things or whatever it is, just that extending that grace that says, this was not a part of my schedule today, but maybe it was a part of God's plan for your day.
Yeah.
And see, this is and not.
Oh man!
And I hate it. I hate it when people overly spiritualize things, and I'm not attempting to do that.
Sure.
But I have found so many times when things. I'll give you a perfect example. I was flying back from Dayton, Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, was doing some work out there, and I had a flight that was going to get me home at around 11 o'clock, and I was really excited because I like sleeping in my own bed.
Yeah. And
it was Dayton to Chicago, Chicago to Seattle. And there was weather in Chicago, so the flight was delayed.
There's always weather in Chicago.
There is. And so they come on the announcement, and so they said, come to the counter if you have a connection. And so I was first at the counter, and I said, I do know that there's a late flight back to Seattle from Dallas. Can you get me to Dallas? And so they got me to Dallas. And on the way to Dallas, I was on my phone or on my laptop because I fly enough and I have elite status and all this and that. But it lets me pick good seats, okay? And so they had assigned me a seat, but I saw this really nice exit row seat that had lots of room in front of it and everything like that. So I wanted this seat.
I want that seat.
And it was open and available. I clicked on it. It said, you have this seat. And I clicked confirm, and it would not confirm.
Oh, man.
And I literally did it 6 or 7 times to try and get that seat, and it didn't give it to me. And so I was stuck in this other seat, a normal, as my wife calls, plebe class seat.
Nice.
But I thought to myself, well, maybe there's a reason.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as we get on the plane, there was a gal who sits in the aisle. I was sitting in the window, and then a young man comes and sits next to me, and he is he's an Asian young man, and we start talking. We talk about what I do and what he does, and he asks me, because I work with relationships, about the work I'm doing, and he starts to volunteer to me and says, oh, my parents were divorced when I was 12, and he was in China at the time.
Wow. And
my mom moved to the States and then remarried, and he was like 22 or so years old, and he said that it was only just recently that he started feeling like it wasn't his fault that his parents divorced.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And then we started talking about things of faith, because I told him I was a pastor also. Right. And
did he wince? Well, you threw yourself under the bus.
Right. No, he actually was quite curious and started asking me questions. And I was talking with him about things and recognized and realized that he had literally no background or understanding of religion or faith or the Bible, because people in our age, Rob.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for lumping me in.
Age range.
No, it is our generation. We are
in this generation. people at least know about Noah's Ark and the Ten Commandments and these types of things.
Because they were movies.
Right? Exactly. Hey, by the way, the Ben-Hur movie's coming out. I really want to see that.
I don't know. I the first one is so classic. I mean, I can't get over the fact that I'm so
Roma
forgetful
Downey
today. No,
Charlton Heston,
is playing
a minor role. Yeah,
right. No, but I just can't get over the fact that he's so clearly white, trying to represent a Middle Eastern man,
Egyptian. Yeah,
but it's hard for me to go with the remakes because the classics are the classics.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But anyway, continue.
Sorry, Roman. He's supposed to be a Roman.
I think
guy. Anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
But Roma Downey is behind, because we're totally on a tangent here. But
this is great.
Yeah, Roma Downey is behind this movie, and she was actually at the National Prayer Breakfast, and I happened to be in D.C. when the National Prayer Breakfast was going on, and she and her husband, I can't remember his name, but they were the keynote speakers at the National Prayer Breakfast.
Robert Downey.
No, stop it. Anyhow, so all these movies, I'm bringing us back now. This is how we know this, but it's also part of our culture, and the fact that a lot of kids, when they were younger, went to Sunday school.
Correct. Yeah.
But that's just not the culture today.
Absolutely not.
And so I have this wonderful conversation with this young man, and we talked pretty much the whole entire flight from Dallas back to Seattle, and it was mostly him asking me questions and me sharing, and it was a beautiful exchange. And I told him, I said, this is not just about you learning from an old guy, but I said, I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
And when we had this conversation, it was a spiritual conversation about the fact that because he is made in the image of God, and this is a core belief of mine, because we're all created in the image of God, when I spend time with you, I'm exposed more to who God is.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
And we were talking about how Asian culture says, oh, well, if you're a young person, you learn from older people. And that's just how it is.
Right.
You learn from older, wiser people. And there's certainly truth to that. But to me, it's much more holistic than that because of the fact that you bear the image of the Creator.
Yeah.
Then when I'm with you, it's a holy moment.
Yeah, I like that.
And so I view my interactions with people that way, and because of that, I feel like it allows me to value everyone, and I don't grade people, or I try not to. I shouldn't say I don't, but say, oh, you're more important than you are, and I've been a professional sports chaplain before, and so I've been around professional athletes, and they're real people too. They have struggles, they have issues, challenges, just like the rest of us. And so, anyhow. So all this coming back to say, we have divine appointments that aren't always in our appointment book, that work differently from what we feel like our schedule's supposed to be. So I'm saying, lighten up, Rob.
Thank you. Well, okay. That's a great return back to the center of this.
And so your wife paid me to do this.
It makes sense now that I think about it. You are an Asian.
Hey, careful now.
Yeah. So well, then let's go down the road. Let's talk about Stronger Families and the mission behind Stronger Families and where it started, where it's going, and your focus on military is a huge component to me, coming from the military and knowing so many families that have struggled with, issues with PTSD, infidelity, that is a giant thing in the service. I have no idea why it occurs at the level it does. So I'd just love to know, more about Stronger Families focus and your role, because, I wrote it down. Your role is the Director of Mission Advancement and Training, and I wondered what that means.
Oh, you took it off the website, huh?
I did.
It changed and it's changed again.
I did.
But it was, from there it went to the Director of Strategic Partnerships, and now it's something new. We haven't come up quite with my new title. But let me back up and tell you a little bit about the organization. Stronger Families was founded about 24 years ago by former Seahawks quarterback Jeff Kemp.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that.
I didn't know that, and I didn't
Well,
I didn't see it on the website.
That's probably because it was by a different name at the time. It was the Washington Family Council.
Oh.
And they did a lot more back then with legal and public policy of trying to support marriage and give practical tools and skills and advice. Or actually, we've moved more towards that direction. But initially, it was legal and public policy, lobbying Olympia, and that types of things to help support marriage. But our mission statement today has evolved. That's what I'm pulling up here.
That's great. I'll just edit all this out.
The mission of Stronger Families is to bring life-changing skills to marriages and families so that they can be strong and thrive.
Okay. Simple and beautiful, but not necessarily simple and beautiful to do.
Well, bringing life-changing skills to marriages and families, I think, is something that we so need in our culture today, because we learn by example. Probably that's the first way we learn.
Right.
But then we also get a lot from the culture and from media and from a lot of different places. But those messages are not always, for one, they're not always healthy messages, but sometimes they're just not even real.
Right. They're not even messages.
Well, they're messages, all right.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that, like, for example, the whole Cinderella story that is propagated throughout Hollywood and through movies, and I mean, and I'm a huge Disney fan, so don't think that I'm trying to bash.
Literally a Cinderella story.
Yeah, but the reality is that life is not that way.
Right.
And you look at Hollywood and the way marriages fall apart so quickly in Hollywood. I think it's in part because people think that it's supposed to be this perfect romance forever.
Right.
And after day 3 or 4, when it ceases to be this perfect romance, then people are like, oh, I guess I just messed up. I made a mistake. I better move on to the next relationship.
Yeah.
And they don't ever find it. So I'm sorry, I tangented again.
No.
But going back to Stronger Families, so in the first few years, we did that legal and public policy thing, and then it expanded to be Families Northwest. That's the name that it was probably known as mostly until the last probably 6 years is when we became Stronger Families.
Okay.
And part of it, the name change, was the fact that Families Northwest was geographically focused, and we are now, we've expanded to serve across the world. Literally, I'm going to Japan next month.
Wow.
And we've been in Germany and Italy, and so what we did about 6 years ago, we developed a program, and our current executive director, Noel Metter, he developed this program called Oxygen for Your Relationships.
Right. I saw it, Oxygen 365.
Yes, oxygen365.com is our new website.
Okay.
And I'll get into that in a minute. But the Oxygen program was an 8 to 10 hour marriage course, and it was kind of a best of the best. So it has elements in it from the 5 love languages, from love and respect, from his needs, her needs. We have the Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, the couple checkup, the flag page test. There's all these pieces that are a part of it, and then a lot of real good original content, just trying to help give people practical skills and tools related to how to make a healthy relationship, conflict resolution, understanding differences, communication. We talk about sex. We look at forgiveness. I mean, the things that that are important to relationships, but our parents never sat us down and said, this is how you communicate.
Right.
Or this is what you do when you get into a conflict situation.
Right.
You know, and it's those types of things where even those of us who had intact, good family structures and loving parents, you just don't learn these things.
Right.
And so what we are doing now in terms of bringing these life-changing skills to families is that we have this great resource, oxygen365.com, and Noel does his own, the Oxygen 365 show, this podcast, and so they interview on that show some of the leading experts on marriage and relationships and authors, and it is just incredible. And every time, and literally every time I've gone out and listened to one of these podcast, and I've been married 23 years now. I feel like it has strengthened my marriage.
Right.
So
Taught you something new every time, right?
yeah. And well, maybe not always something new, but certainly something that I maybe need to be reminded of, or that will help enrich. And so, but we have grown mostly due to the fact that we have gotten into the space of serving our military. And so we have now a partnership with the USO. We have direct contracts with different military groups like USASOC, which is the U.S. Army Special Operations Command.
Okay.
So these are the ones who do the Green Berets and the Rangers. We are actually invited recently, beginning of the year, to work with. They have what's called the Q course, which is the SFQC, the Special Forces Qualification Course.
Okay.
And it's the course that if you are going to become a Green Beret, you go through this 18-month course. And this year, in 2016, every single married soldier who is going through the Q course will go through Oxygen, our program.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so, yeah, it is really, it's been incredibly humbling and just such an honor to be able to serve our troops this way. And so yeah, it's exciting what's happening with the organization.
Yeah. Well, so how long have you been involved with Stronger then?
So I joined Stronger Families 5 years ago. So April was my 5th anniversary.
Okay.
And at the time that we had 3 staff, and our budget was probably just a little over $500,000. Wow. And today we have, I think, 16, 17 staff, and we'll break, Lord willing, we'll break $3 million this year.
Wow.
So it has really been a rapid and exponential growth over the last several years.
So now, is it a true nonprofit in that it's funded by outside resources, or are the classes? I admit, because I wanted to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are the classes fee based? I mean, is it
Yes.
eight hours is $5,000? You know what I mean? What's the it's okay?
$5,000.
Well,
that's cheap, man.
I know.
No,
pay
our classes
$5,000.
are $10,000.
Yeah. Nice.
No, yeah. So when we partner with the USO, for example, going out to our military, the USO, we have a grant relationship with them, and so they pay. And part of their charter is that military pay for nothing.
Wow.
And so the troops, they come
benefit.
for free. We partner with church groups. We partner with the YMCAs to do the program in the community. And they do charge. They have a fee for it when people go through the program. And part of that, too, is that there's this perceived value issue, right? Because it's like, if a program's for free, then is it really worth anything? And so there is some fees based on it, but the majority of our funding comes from private individuals and from grants and from foundations. So we are a true nonprofit in that sense. We're a 501c3.
Wow. So is the focus only on the special forces because of what I'm assuming would be issues like PTSD? Well,
no, not at all. We work with all military families, but the special forces have additional stresses on their relationships. We work in the first responder community and with law enforcement couples. There's another great organization out there called Behind the Badge Foundation, and so we've worked with them to serve law enforcement couples, and we have relationships with a lot of first responder chaplains, so we try and support them because they help when there's, but I mean, anywhere where there's high stress relationships, the program has been very, very successful because people recognize that, you know, sadly, I mean, I'm being interviewed here in our offices in Kirkland, right? And if you look around here, there's this sense of well-being and, you know, upper middle class suburbia.
Absolutely.
And I always say, money covers a multitude of sins, right? Mm-hmm. If you're struggling in your relationship and you have lots of money, well, then you can just go out and buy things that'll make you feel better. It won't necessarily help your relationship, but you can cover up a bad relationship with lots of money.
Right. You can fill a lot of holes with that money.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And sadly, the reality is that a lot of people do that. And when they hit financial hard times, that's when the marriage starts to break apart, because all of a sudden now it wasn't as easy as it was. And, you saw a lot of broken marriages back in 2008, 2009, for this kind
Suicides as well.
Suicides as well. And so finances is one issue, but there's a lot of things that add stress to a relationship. And so I feel like as we are able to help couples to get the basic skills that are needed to help navigate stressful times, unemployment, or, we work a lot with wounded warriors. I'm going out to Virginia in 2 weeks working with wounded warriors because they have a whole nother layer of challenges. I mean, imagine your livelihood, your identity, everything that you do is being a warrior, a military hero type person, and all of a sudden that's all stripped away because you have a brain injury or you've lost a leg or something like that.
Right.
And now how do you navigate your relationship? How do you navigate your identity?
Yeah.
So anyhow, Yeah,
that's a terrible thing. I have a friend who runs a nonprofit in Massachusetts. You might have seen. I interviewed him on a podcast a month ago. Kevin Lynch with the Quell Foundation, and their focus is on lifting that mask off of the issues concerning mental illness, and the fact that so many people struggle with literally being mentally ill, but there's no real sources for them out there, or they're really, really reduced. And so that foundation is trying to get individuals who are interested in serving those communities accredited, right? Getting them in the hospitals and getting them a location. With Stronger Families, is there a similar focus in that you're trying to put people on the ground that individuals can go and see? Or, I mean, how are you finding yourself infiltrating into the community, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no. Well, I think it's a multi-tiered approach, but I think probably the biggest way that we're doing that is through our online presence, through Oxygen 365.
Okay.
A way that a lot of couples engage is we have what's called our 7-day love challenge. So you can jump on there and do the 7-day love challenge, and that helps you engage. You could take this relationship survey that looks at specific areas of the relationship, and then it starts to feed you specific content that's relevant to where you are in your relationship today. And so I think it really helps kind of bring to the surface issues that are there, issues that that are present. It helps to support and provide you input in relation to that.
So there's actually metrics.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So have you found that as a group, I don't know how you would label Stronger Families, I just guess as a nonprofit, that there are metrics that show how much impact Stronger Families has had? I mean,
Absolutely.
What kind of growth or what kind of success are you seeing? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, no, not at all. The most data that we have to date is related to our big seminar, our 8 to 10 hour program. And because we've actually contracted with a company to specifically run metrics for us, and we've measured 3 areas: overall relationship satisfaction, communication, and conflict resolution. And in all 3 of those areas, pre-program to 6 months post-program, things have gone from scores in the 30s and 40s up to scores in the 60s and 70s percentile. So it has really radically helped positively affect relationships.
Wow. So how many families, I mean, again, if you don't mind sharing approximately, how many families do you think Stronger has affected or impacted so far?
Gosh, you know what? I'd have to get the data for you, but I know that it's well over 10,000
families.
Yeah, families. Wow. In the last several years alone.
It gives you so much hope.
It really does. And obviously, to change the culture around marriage and to help relationships, I mean, much more needs to happen, but it really has it has had a great impact already.
Well, admittedly, it speaks to me, and again, with what I'd shared earlier, and I'm not going to volunteer my wife, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I mean, I listened to this, and I mean, I didn't think about this ahead of time, that maybe this was something that I could even look at.
Oh, yeah. You know? So, like, for example, we have a class that we're going to do in early November at the Bellevue YMCA.
Okay.
And so would love for you guys to we're just, I think, building out the registration for it now. So,
Yeah. So tell me this, and feel free to share anything you want in regards to other focus of the mission. But what is Stronger Families need from the listenership? Right, people are listening to this today. What can they do to support this nonprofit? I mean, outside of participation or even donating money. I mean, are there other ways they can help?
well, obviously, those are the ones that are the most obvious. Is that if they have a business and their business wants to partner with us, we have a big event coming up. You've seen the Blind Side movie, the one with Sandra Bullock, Michael Orr's story.
Yeah.
So the real life mom, Leanne Toohey, she's coming out to right here to Seattle, and it's actually Bellevue, to the Westin Hotel on the 18th of November, which is the Friday before Thanksgiving. We have our annual fundraising dinner. And that is always just a really great evening. So people can get involved that way if they want to become a corporate sponsor or attend the dinner themselves. It's just going to be great. Last year we had Taya Kyle, so Chris Kyle, American Sniper. His wife came out. Oh,
That's
my
right.
gosh.
You invited me to that, and
Yeah,
I couldn't go.
I did. And
I was crying on the phone. I can't make it.
It was such a great event, and she is so articulate and just such a beautiful person. She was great.
Yeah,
but,
her story is something else. I mean,
but-
his story is amazing. So.
Yeah. So anyhow, but we have trainings going on, and we're actually in the process of setting up a program as well, where you can go online and begin the process of becoming certified in our curriculum, so that you can help spread the word and teach others and strengthen relationships just in your own local community.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to get involved. But I mean, go to our website, oxygen365.com or strongerfamilies.org,
Right.
which is the nonprofit side. Or I mean, it's all nonprofit, but the relationship part is the Oxygen 365.
Okay, and you said there's a podcast that that the director does. What's the title of that podcast?
It's the Oxygen 365 show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So just click on the show, and then you can see the list. I mean, really some great people, big names. And the other thing about what we do is that we are a faith-based organization, but the Oxygen program is faith neutral. Okay.
I like that.
And so what this means, it's not non-faith, but it is not, we don't lead with faith. We lead with the very practical skills and tools that are there for helping to strengthen relationships. And as a result, it's applicable to all people. You don't have to be of a faith background in order to go through the program and to be helped by the program.
Right. Or to be intimidated by the fact that people, that again, the assumption that it would be, in a sense, forced down their throats. Like, hey, here's how you're going to help your marriage. Trust Jesus.
Right.
Which nobody wants to hear.
No.
I don't even think believers want to hear those words. You mean I got to eat grasshoppers and honey?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
No, definitely. It's a part of why I feel like the program has gone so well. One, these are what I believe are God's best concepts for relationships, but they're applicable to everyone. And so as you hear the things that are taught in the program, you think, oh yeah, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Why? Because it's practical and because it works. Does it happen to be what God designed for relationships? Well, yes.
Sure.
Yeah, God intended us to be able to communicate well together. God intended for us to be able to forgive one another when we screw up.
Absolutely.
Well, who's going to screw up? Everyone, right?
And
so,
forever.
Forever, yeah.
Right.
And so,
yeah, no, I find that interesting. I was having a conversation before I came into your office today with a friend of mine, and we were talking about this very subject and talking about the fact that I don't want anybody in the world to worry about what they think I'm going to say because of what I profess, meaning, right? Okay, I'm Rob Jones, Christian wannabe,
Right.
you know what I mean? And therefore he's going to act and behave a certain way, and he's going to try to influence my life in a certain way. And I don't think I have any right to do that. I think what I have the right to do is to try to be the very best person I can.
Absolutely.
And to me, it sounds like that's really what Stronger Families is all about. Just doing the very best I can, living for these people, being very unconditional in their approach to them, and giving them every resource to be the best and strongest person, which ultimately culminates in a beautiful marriage if you're both willing to just adapt and overcome, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just like crushed me.
Well, these are the things that people are wanting. These are the things that people are longing for. And, when you talked a moment ago about just coming to people and being who you are, and to me, this is really why it is that people were so attracted to Jesus. And we had a little bit of this discussion over lunch, is that the reality is that people didn't feel like Jesus had a hidden agenda for them.
Right.
Because, he already knew what was going on in people's minds. And so when he came to them, he knew how to speak to what their needs were.
Right.
And it was specifically related to them. And I think those of us in the faith community need to do a lot more listening. Because we're not Jesus and we don't know what's going on inside a person's heart and mind,
Right.
We need to spend more time listening rather than coming preloaded with our agenda, thinking, oh, okay, this person needs this.
Right.
And really, I feel like that's why, for me, I love people. And I have a lot of friends from a lot of different places in society, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different political backgrounds, because I like to listen to people and I try to engage them for who they are. And I think that's what this world needs more of.
Yeah, bless you.
Is this whole place of humility and coming to people and just understanding them for who they are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that in regards to Jesus, because obviously I wasn't there when he was walking the earth, but the thing that I found interesting about Jesus' life, at least based on what I have gleaned from reading the Gospels, is that Jesus, in a sense, had an agenda, but not the agenda of any of the people that they wanted him to be, right? They all wanted the Messiah to be, he was coming to burn things down, man.
Mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
and destroy and
he's gonna get us even.
Right. Yeah, he's gonna make things right for us by getting us even. That's exactly it. He's all about vindication,
right.
and I find that interesting. That if a Christian, I always use that term kind of questionably because I kind of despise being called a Christian. I like to think of myself as a faithful man or as a believer, because to me the word Christian always sounds like it's kind of, there's a little judgment in it. Well, he's a Christian,
Well, the culture has actually taken that term and has a lot of baggage has become attached to it. And so I think that's why you have that reaction to it. Several pastors I know use the term, I'm a Jesus follower, I'm not a Christian.
Right.
Because Christian has extra stuff with it.
Right.
Whereas a Jesus follower is pretty clearly defined. What do? I follow Jesus.
Right.
I seek to live as he did. And
right.
But
a lot of people, and I mean, I'm kind of making light of this, but a lot of people will say, but that's kind of like saying it's network marketing, not an MLM. Right. They still they still struggle because they know underneath it, at the core of it, is this dude named Jesus Christ. Yeah. And honestly, I'll use the word, it pisses them off. They hate the idea of having to be held accountable to a very specific set of what they are taught. It doesn't mean it's right, but they're taught to follow the rules and to be a Christian and to it's when religion, we discussed this earlier, it's when religion gets in the way of my absolute heart, and that I know Christ's message was not a religious message.
Right. Well, this comes back to one of my big pet peeves, okay? And those are things that Christianity has made cultural that are not biblical, okay? Or cultural things that Christianity has made people equate with our faith that has nothing to do with Scripture.
Right.
Okay, like, for example, the use of alcohol.
Right.
Okay? I mean, for goodness sake, Jesus turned water into wine. He didn't say, oh, yeah, you can only drink non-alcoholic sodas, right? And so Jesus he made wine, okay?
Yeah.
And it was not non-alcoholic. It was the best quality wine that was there.
Yeah.
And so these Christians who try and dance around and say, well, Christians aren't supposed to drink alcohol. Now, the Bible's also very clear about not getting drunk.
Right,
Okay,
absolutely.
or overindulging.
Right.
And so, yeah, and so it's those types of things that just so frustrate me. And I think rightly so, people reject that brand of Christianity. I think that should be ultimately very much rejected.
Yes. I agree with you 1,000%. The other struggle, especially with people obviously who are agnostic or atheistic, who don't have any faith background, is they only quote the Bible based on the Old Testament. It's always the whole, well, Leviticus said, kill the homosexuals. And you know what I mean? It's all this stuff that's negative. And I don't know why there's such a desire to pull all the fear-based stuff out of the Bible. And it might be simply, again, going back to religion, how religion has formed that. But fortunately, I mean, it never touched me. I never grew up with pangs of guilt over who I was as a human being. I just felt like God dug me.
Wow, you're lucky.
Yeah. And I mean, I hope in the podcast when I talked about my dad last week, I hope that kind of comes out, because my dad was not a even remotely pious guy. I mean, he wasn't, he didn't walk around swearing. I think I heard my dad say one swear word, seriously, in his whole life. But he was never religious in the sense of like talking about Jesus all day, or, it was just not his thing. And it wasn't even my mom's thing, although she's very much a churchgoer, and we were raised to do that. But yeah, I always saw God as just the guy who had my back. I never saw him as the gray-haired man in heaven who's mad at me.
See, you are so lucky, because I think there's so many of us, and I say us because I put myself in this category. I think because of the way I was culturized growing up,
Right.
And so from my schooling to everything in my life, everything was performance based. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's good things about performance based learning, because it teaches you that you need to do better.
Right.
And you need to improve.
Right.
And you need to grow. But what happens is that when that creeps into your identity in terms of who you are, and I think it's a huge problem in our society and our culture today, because of the fact that people feel like there's all these expectations on them. And I think this is the biggest turnoff why people turn away from what they think God is because they think that I'm just a great disappointment to God.
Yeah, it's so not that at all.
Well, but this is this whole performance reality, though, because performance reality to me is you have to do this, you have to do this well, you have to do this better, and if you don't, then you don't meet the grade, you don't meet the standard.
Yeah.
Okay? And Christians talk about that a lot as well, in terms of missing the mark, the sin, what it means, and all that. And so I think what happens then as a result is people are like, they don't get what you got in terms of understanding God as being someone who's got your back and who believes in you and who loves you. Because for most of us, it's like, gosh, I just let God down again.
Yeah.
And again and again. And it's like, God, how could you really love me?
Yeah.
Because I think from everybody who's around us, and they're the ones who are supposed to be believing in you, your teachers and everything, and they're just trying to make your grades better, right? And it's like, gosh, if this is what God's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, again, this goes back to religion too. And I mean, I'm not going to throw any particular sect of the church under the bus, Episcopalian.
Oh, go on. It's more
Catholic, all
fun.
that.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I mean, but I am fortunate in that I didn't grow up in certain churches that are very
legalistic.
very legalistic, very fear-based.
Sure.
And I have had spiritual, holy moments, and not that they were from me, because that's not it at all. But I'm going to tell you a little story, and this is the weirdest story, and everybody who hears this is going to laugh because they probably don't believe it. But years ago, I call it a dream, but it wasn't a dream. I can't explain it. Some people would say it was a vision, but I had this, and I was married. So I'm on my second marriage. I'm remarried in 1999, and in 1993, I had this image that I saw, and I was walking down. Imagine a ship pier, going out into the ocean. I was walking down a pier with my then wife, and there was a telephone booth at the end of the pier. And I emphasize end of the pier. I was walking towards the end of the pier, and I heard the phone ring. And this still makes me emotional. I can't believe how much this makes me emotional. It's 23 years ago. I heard the phone ring, and I walked into the phone booth, and I couldn't pick it up. I turned around and walked back. My wife walked into the phone booth. She picked up the phone. She said hello, and then she started smiling. She didn't say anything. She just started smiling. And then she put the phone down. She didn't hang it up. Mm-hmm. She let it hang, dangle like the old phone booths, right?
Right.
The little yellow pages down below. And she walked out, and she walked off the end of the pier and kept walking. Now that is cool enough. It's very cinematic, right? You can imagine like a woman almost like walking on water, right? But she wasn't walking on water. She was walking. I can't explain it, but it was like the pier extended, but it was invisible. Right. And she just kept going. And I knew I had to pick up the phone, but I was so afraid to pick up the phone. And I could feel in my heart, I could hear it in my head, the person on the other end of the line is Jesus. And I finally grabbed this stupid phone. I remember this. I can see it as clear as bell. And I put it up to my head, and it said, "You're going to lose her if you don't change." And I hung up the phone. I woke up, whatever you want to call it. And people go like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, a couple years later, we got divorced. But I never changed. I wanted what I wanted. I wanted how I wanted it. I wanted my wife to be a sex slave. I did. I wanted her to be what I wanted her to be, not what I didn't want her to be a human. I didn't want her to be a spouse. I wanted her to be an object that I could own and have when I wanted to have, and could push away when I didn't want it. And I've never said this out loud. I can't believe I'm saying it in a public space that everybody's going to hear.
You can always edit it.
I can. I don't think I should, though.
No, this is real stuff.
And to my wife, who I adore, my loving wife, Tomoko, I love you so much. So please understand, I'm not saying this so it'll hurt you, because I don't want it to hurt you. But I so regret not being the right person for my first wife. However, I will say that it planted an incredible seed in me, clearly, as I've never forgotten this experience, that as broken as I was, and granted, admittedly, am still broken in some ways, time and experience creates wisdom of some level, and I have some wisdom. I would say I have some wisdom from life experience, and it has made me certainly a better father, and I believe a better husband. So I will say I did learn from that experience. I'm not a fool. I did learn, but I so wished I had listened, only because I really do believe that there are no accidents. And I do wish the very best for her. There was a period when we went through a divorce where, we clearly despised each other and were just at each other all the time. But I do want the very best for her. And now, being remarried, I so wish I had only met Tomoko from Ground Zero. Yeah. I so wish she was the only mother. I so wish she was the only spouse. I so wish she was the only lover, because she's extraordinary. I mean, my wife is so badass. I mean, my wife is so awesome. She's hilarious and weird and cute and sassy and difficult and extraordinary and hey, I've already said goofy, and she's got these giant awesome eyes, and she's just amazing and challenging. But I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and by the way, Jesus is a tenor. His voice is like, he's like, "You're gonna lose her."
That's not a tenor.
Okay,
that's
he's
a
an
soprano.
Alto. No, he's an alto.
Okay.
He's an alto. But it was a very odd experience, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah,
never experienced.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I always, I marvel when people have those kinds of experiences. I haven't really had any of those types. I've had times where I feel clearly that I've been spoken to, but I've not heard an audible voice. I mean, I shared with you my poem that I wrote about my dad.
That's awesome.
After he passed away, and just how I felt like I was spoken to from the grave.
Yeah.
Not with an audible voice, but clearly, I feel like God was imparting some wisdom to me in that moment, and. And see, this is part of why I appreciate being invited onto your show, Rob, is that I feel like when we, as a community of people, have the opportunity to hear stories and journey with others, that it enriches our life because we learn from them. Ted Roberts, who's a writer, I don't know if you know Ted Roberts, he wrote the book Pure Desire. It's very good.
I read the book. I didn't know he was the author.
So Ted Roberts...
Sorry, Ted.
No, it's all good. But the way he says it is that he says, "I've paid the dumb tax."
Yeah.
And the dumb tax only needs to be paid once.
Yeah.
And that's why I think stories from others are so valuable, because if we can hear stories from other people, then we can learn from them. And that's why I believe God put us here in community with others, so that we can learn from one another, so that we can be enriched by each other, and we don't have to pay the dumb tax if it's already been paid for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, certainly it's my hope, as a human being, that this podcast and the company I'm forming and all these other things, these are incredible people, and you. I mean, I'm so humbled that you gave me this time today. I really am, and I love our new friendship. I mean, we've known each other for a few years, but we've always kind of rested on the fringes of our lives, just life, right?
Yeah.
But I just think it's really, really important to go all in, and to be really, really transparent. And I realize most people won't. I get that, and I also get that my kind of thinking. And I assume your kind of thinking is that transparency is worth the sacrifice, because other people need to hear it. They absolutely need to hear it. Yeah. It isn't to crush them. It isn't to make them feel like they're less than. I want them to know I'm actually down there with them.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be the weakest link. I say this all the time. If I were in a band, I'd want to be the weakest player. If I were in a business network, I want to be the weakest guy. I want to be elevated, right?
I talked to your band members. By the way, they said that's true. You're the weakest guy.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm just kidding, bro.
Well, I know that's not true.
I just had to.
No, I get that.
Well, and I so appreciate that, and.
Yeah, I know you got to go.
No, it's okay, because we talked about the book that I'm writing.
Yes, I did want you to talk about that real quick.
No, but it's so relevant because I think we're in a culture that is ready. People are ready to hear things that will put their life the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, you and I were very close in age, around the half-century mark, okay?
Reminded me again. Thank you.
We won't say exactly. And I am older, by the way.
You are. You have 2 years on me.
I do. But I have so many friends, and I'm sure you're in the exact same boat, who are going through this quote-unquote midlife crisis, right? And my book is totally just... I don't have an exact title, but I'm thinking that the title is going to be Wholehearted, A Man's Guide to Avoiding Midlife Crisis at Any Age. Because midlife crisis doesn't happen just at one age, but it's at a place, and you can begin avoiding midlife crisis when you're 18. Yeah, I have an 18-year-old, I have a 21-year-old, and I'm trying to put things into their lives. I have an 8-year-old, or almost 8-year-old, and all 3 boys. And I don't want them to have to go through midlife crisis. And my whole thesis behind this is that as a culture, and it comes back to what we've talked about this whole podcast in terms of expectations that society and culture, people have placed upon us, okay? And it's based on expectations, it's based on comparisons. And so, for example, I'll use my 21-year-old. He is 21. He is a rock star.
Nice.
He is an apprentice mechanic. He's an amazing photographer, incredibly gifted. I wear this bracelet, autism awareness, because he's on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
But just brilliant mind, incredible guy. But he did not pursue 4-year higher education.
Okay.
And there are people who will say, when they say that he's an apprentice mechanic or whatever, they'll say, well, that's okay. Or...
Because he's autistic?
No. They won't.
Okay.
No, because he's not in a 4-year university.
Oh, I get it.
Because they'll say, oh, so where's he going to school? That's the first question people ask me.
Sure.
And I'll say, well, he's not actually in school. And what this relates to the whole thing is that so often people think, oh, well, I'm supposed to do this. Now there's all these parents switching this off because they're saying, oh, I want my kids to go to 4-year college. Well, 4-year college is a great place, and I had a great experience at my university.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not necessarily right for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so many people, they go through, they get the degree, and they're like, oh, okay, I have to now find a career in my degree field. So they get the job. Maybe while they're in college, they met someone, or they meet someone as a young person, and then they get married. And then the expectation is, okay, now we have to have kids. And you see where this is leading?
Right. The cultural expectation.
And then you wake up one day, you're 45, you're 50, and you turn around and you look at your life and you're saying, I didn't do anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I did everything that I was supposed to do.
Right.
And that's why people have this midlife crisis.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? Because there's all these expectations that they've been... And so, to me... And again, it's not saying that any of those things are bad, but if you're just going through the motions, then you will wake up one day and say, who am I? Or what the hell have I done with my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to be wholehearted, and my favorite author right now is Brené Brown. I don't know if you know Brené Brown, but, top 5 TED Talks ever. And she speaks so much about being wholehearted. So that's understanding who you are, who you're made to be, who you're called to be, and not these expectations and pretenses and all these different things. And so my book is along those lines in terms of just saying, okay, men, who are we as men? Who are we designed to be? How are we wired? So anyhow, I'm excited to write this book because and whenever I share it with people, they're like, tell me quick, when's it going to be out? I want to buy a copy for my husband.
Yeah. For my husband.
Yeah.
Women are only people listening to this podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Do you have any, how far along are you? Can you share that?
Yeah, I'm in the pretty early stages.
Okay.
So, but now putting this out here publicly, it's awesome kind of pressure. So, I travel a fair amount for my work with Stronger Families. Again, as I mentioned, because we work so much with military, I'm deployed, as my wife says, constantly going out to different military installations. So I find myself evenings in hotels, and I've got time, and So I'm really going to be working on this book.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, I like the fact that you're using that downtime because it's actually time made for that, right? Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know if you know who he is.
I know
He
who
wrote
that is.
Crush It, and
Right.
his whole thinking, and I love it. And granted, I don't necessarily subscribe to him 1,000% because there are aspects of him that I just think are okay. That's a little loud. That's a little wasteful. You know what I'm saying already.
I don't really know too much about him, but yeah.
But that all I admire him greatly for this, and I was listening to this recently in one of his audiobooks, and he was mentioning the fact that if you find your purpose and you go after it wholeheartedly, as you'd said, until you get to X, and nobody can tell you what X is except you. The last thing you should be doing with your downtime is watching Netflix or playing video games. No, granted, you should absolutely put time aside for your wife and your children. Those are your priorities. They should be actually above everything you do for a living. But you should be putting your whole effort into that thing as you build it. You were made for that purpose. You have to go after it. And so I like that your book is speaking about that thing. And I think it's really important for people, especially in America. And it's interesting because you mentioned how you grew up and sort of the cultural expectations on you. I come up from a family that nobody completed college. Nobody
okay.
ever in my nobody.
Right.
It's an amazing thing. It actually makes me kind of sad, you know?
Right.
But nobody did. Both my parents went to college but didn't complete it. And then I had a chance, and I went to college, and I didn't complete it. Now, it wasn't because I wanted to emulate them. It was literally because I couldn't afford it. And more importantly, what I was going to school for was not what I was driven to do and driven to be. I was following cultural expectations. Oh, I think I'll go and get into social work, or I'll go and become a doctor, whatever it is that I was going to do. I was originally thinking I was going to go be a dentist of all things. And it's because my mom worked for a dentist. It wasn't that I wanted to be a dentist. My brain said, identify with $200,000 a year and a decent job and a decent income and a decent lifestyle. Okay, I'll do that.
Right.
If I don't get successful playing drums.
Right.
But because I lived my life on the fence saying, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll do that. Neither worked out. Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got in my late 40s when I said, I got to kill this. It's not about killing the dream. I actually need to pursue my dream. And if I make money, that will be because I went all in and people recognize that I love it and I'm passionate about it and I'm faithful to it. And it's just mine. And the funny thing is, Garrick, as soon as I did that, my world changed around me.
Yes.
And I have thousands of acquaintances around the world because of my past lives, all the different jobs I've done. And so many of them have called me up and said, "What are you doing now, Rob?" Literally, right?
Right.
And then I talk with them and they say every time, and this happened to me twice yesterday, wow, I can totally hear the passion in your voice. I've never heard this.
Yeah.
And it's because before they would encourage me because they're my friends.
Right.
Inside their head, they're saying, I hope this is the right thing for Rob.
Right.
But they knew it wasn't.
Yeah.
And now they can hear it.
Yep.
And now they're like, dude, I'm all in. What can I do for you? And that changes everything. So anybody listening to this, what we're saying is the truth. Quit chasing your tail. Quit chasing what culture tells you to do. I'm not telling you don't honor your parents, but do what you have been built for. Do what you're made for.
Absolutely.
And go nuts. go after it. Email me at rob@rockstarsuperhero.com. I dare you to care. You know what I mean? I dare you to go after it because that's what we're made for. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I think this is a great way to close this off because you and I are guys sitting across the table from one another right now who really feel like we're where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there's no better place to be than where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I'll cap this off with there's a scripture from the book of Ephesians 2:10, and it says, "We are His workmanship." Now that word workmanship is also accurately translated as masterpiece.
Oh wow!
Isn't that good?
That's cool. I like that.
So think of
the
yourself.
magnum opus.
Yeah, right? But think of yourself not just as someone created to take up space on earth or whatever, but if you are a masterpiece,
Yeah,
right?
That's lovely.
And then it says, created anew in Christ, or created in Christ Jesus, to do the good works that he prepared in advance for us to do.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, it's like we are all created so uniquely and so differently. I mean, there's no two alike. I mean, that's a part of the characteristic of a masterpiece, right?
Right.
And each masterpiece is designed to do something different. So you're a rock star superhero, dude, right? I'm Stronger Families, military serving, part-time pastor, dad guy, right?
Soccer playing. Don't
Soccer
forget
player, yeah. But all of those things are who I am.
Yeah.
And part of that masterpiece of who I was created to be. And everyone listening to this has a unique and special place. And God created them uniquely and specially. And it's such a wonderful thing to feel like, you know what, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And Rob, clearly you're where you're supposed to be right now too.
Thanks.
And so it's an honor and a privilege to be with you today. And thank you so much for the invitation. And
Yeah, same. And thanks for the great opportunity to work in this studio today, because it sounds good. It sounds really good. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you to Garrick Pang, and thank you to Stronger Families. And definitely go online and take a look at the website, listen to the podcast. Keep an eye on Garrick's, Facebook page or LinkedIn page, but follow him, because when this book comes out, I think it's going to impact your life. So thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much.
Oh, one final thing. I'll just say, if you want to listen to any of the messages that we have online too, my church website is deltaeverett.org.
Excellent.
deltaeverett.org, and then it's the oxygen365.com.
Okay, and so in the show notes, I'll make sure the link is available to people who want to check it out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right.